I was going over my dowry inventory when I suddenly overheard a few sparrows gossiping. Rujung is loaded with money, but too bad. It'll all go to someone else in the end. Without her dowry, how would the second young master afford to marry the general's daughter? The madam looks down on Rujung for being a merchant's daughter. She's plotting to switch the bride. When the bridal sedan arrives, it'll go next door to that sickly man. If Rujung doesn't want to be a living widow, she'll have to give in and become a concubine to the second young master. Either way, her dowry benefits the Marquis family. My fingers froze on the abacus. It's one thing to plot against me, but to plot against my money? Did they forget merchant women are the most petty and vengeful creatures alive? 1. The sparrows were still chirping away nearby. Their topic had shifted from my marriage to the banquet in the front hall. I closed the ledger book. My maid, Cian, came in with a bowl of scented water for me to wash my hands and reported softly. The Marquis and Madam are hosting a banquet in the flower hall for General Yang and his daughter. The second young master is there too. Seems someone had been scheming just now, and the sparrows in the tree caught wind of it. It was 3 days ago, after I visited my father's grave, that I suddenly realized I could understand what birds were saying. At first, I just thought it was amusing. I never imagined I'd overhear this kind of conspiracy today. I casually scattered a handful of pearl millet on the windowsill. The sparrows chirped joyfully as they flew over to eat. Tasty. Eat more. Rujung is kind and beautiful. I'm Rujung's favorite little sparrow. At that moment, Madam's old servant, Granny Zhou, arrived. She gave a curtsy with a proud, arrogant look on her face. Miss Biao, Madam is entertaining the general's daughter today and lacks a suitable gift for the first meeting. She sent me to come collect one. Collect? What a clever tongue you've got, Granny. Cian scowled and spoke up sharply. Giving someone else a meeting gift, and you expect my lady to pay for it? Are you asking or begging? Granny Zhou's old face turned bright red. Furious and flustered, she turned to glare at me. Miss Biao, Madam is your blood aunt. She's taken you in out of kindness for years. It's just one meeting gift. How could you say things like begging or borrowing? I couldn't help but laugh. Even when I toss birds a handful of rice, they at least chirp a few nice words in return. This hollow shell of a Marquis household has been leeching off me for years, and now even when they come begging, they have the nerve to act like royalty. Madam timed this perfectly, waiting until the guests had arrived before sending someone to collect a gift from me. She just wants me to show up and see it all for myself. Fine. I'll play along. It's just a meeting gift. No problem. Cian, go fetch that white jade bracelet. I'll deliver it to Annie myself. Ignoring Granny Zhou's frantic pleas, I marched boldly toward the flower hall with Cian in tow. But the moment we reached the entrance, we were stopped by the servants and maids. Miss Biao, there are important guests inside. You're just a dependent orphan. It's not your place to be here. I glanced at Granny Zhou. If I can't go in, then neither can my jade bracelet. She faltered, about to say more, when a clear, feminine voice suddenly rang out from nearby. Second young master, why is someone blocking the entrance? The speaker was a finely dressed young woman, elegant and radiant. Standing beside her was the second young master of the Marquis household, Pei Tingyu, my fiancé, whom I had been engaged to since childhood. Pei Tingyu looked flustered and quickly explained. This is a cousin who's been staying with us. It's very hot today, Miss Yang. Please go inside to cool off. As he spoke, he motioned at me to move aside. I didn't budge. His expression grew increasingly anxious. Miss Yang giggled behind her handkerchief. Oh, it's fine. Every household has a few poor relatives hanging around, don't they? I narrowed my eyes slightly. Even though it was our first meeting, something about her felt oddly familiar. As if I'd seen her somewhere before. Before I could think further, Madam finally arrived, fashionably late. The dishes are all served. Come in and take your seats, she said with a smile. Then she turned to me. Since you're already here, Zheng'er, come in as well. Auntie likes it best when you help serve the meal. A few birds chirped near my ear again. Bad people eat by themselves and make Rujung serve them. Yeah, someone go poop on her head. I fought back a laugh and forced a polite reply.
2.
In the flower hall, the women sat behind a screen, separated from the men. The table was piled high with delicacies. I immediately recognized several ingredients. They were clearly the dried abalone, fish maw, ginseng, and monkey head mushrooms that the shopkeepers had gifted me in gratitude. Yet somehow, these rare treasures had magically migrated from my courtyard to this dining table without a word. I nearly laughed from how furious I was. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Madam actually said to Miss Yang, "Zheng'er is such a clever and obedient girl. Why don't we have her serve the dishes today?" Miss Yang gave a demure nod. "Then I'll have my maid tell Miss Biao what foods I avoid." Madam smiled warmly, as if doting. "Of course. Zheng'er, make sure to remember everything carefully." The marriage between the Pei and Yang families wasn't even finalized yet, but I, merely a guest, was already being treated like a concubine in training. What kind of twisted logic was that? I took a bold seat right at the edge of a table. "Auntie, I'm afraid I'm terribly unlucky today. Just yesterday, while working on the account books, the abacus beads were so heavy that I strained my hand. I really can't manage to serve dishes right now." Miss Yang chuckled lightly. "What kind of abacus could possibly strain someone's hand? But if you don't wish to serve, it's fine too." I glanced sideways at Madam's displeased expression. My abacus was made entirely of solid gold. My father had it crafted for me the day I was born. I weighed exactly 5 jin and 3 liang, so the abacus weighs 5 jin and 3 liang too. Normally, it wouldn't be a problem using it, but lately it's the end of the month, and all the shops have come to settle their accounts. I spent the entire day calculating. Miss Yang was visibly choked by my blatant display of wealth. She didn't say another word to me for the rest of the meal. Watching her face turn a shade of slate blue, I suddenly found my appetite surging. I even had a second bowl. The banquet ended hastily. As the guests were being sent off, Madam called out to me. I knew she had something to say. All this singing and staging today had one purpose: to remind me of my place and pressure me into backing off. Sure enough, she began with a sigh, lamenting how hard Pei Tingyu's career had been. Then added, "General Yang is a powerful backer. Miss Yang and Tingyu are of similar age, and they make a fine match." I raised an eyebrow. "If I recall correctly, Tingyu and I are already engaged." She waved her hand hastily. "That was just a verbal agreement. There's no written contract, no birth date exchange. It doesn't count. Back then, your father was severely injured and dying. He entrusted you to me. Yes, I once considered marriage between our families, but Tingyu is a marquis son. He'll inherit the title one day. He can't marry a girl with no background as his principal wife." When my father passed, the entire Rin family estate was listed under my dowry and brought with me to the Nanyang Marquis household. From a declining noble house to one still able to maintain appearances. It was all because of my dowry. Back then, they dangled a marriage promise to coax my father into agreeing. Now they want to break that promise to climb higher and marry into power. Do they really think they can have everything in this world? I slowly rose and looked straight at my dear aunt. "Very well. Then I'll call off the engagement with the second young master." Madam was stunned and rushed to grab my arm. "You silly girl. What nonsense is this? We're just discussing it. A girl like you, with no family to back you. Once you leave the Marquis household, you'll be at everyone's mercy. What kind of decent man would you ever marry? Rather than let you suffer elsewhere, wouldn't it be better to stay here and become Tingyu's concubine? You're my own niece by blood, and you and Tingyu grew up together. What difference does it make, concubine or wife? 3. What's the difference? What good woman would willingly give up the position of a wife just to become a concubine, looked down upon by all? Besides, my father once said, 'No daughter of the Rin family shall ever be a concubine.' Back when Aunt was arranging her marriage, it was my father who stood up to all objections and provided nearly half the family fortune as her dowry, so that she, a merchant's daughter, could marry into the Marquis household as a proper second wife. From a tradeswoman to the lady of a marquis. And now, this very aunt of mine is trying to persuade me to be a concubine? Isn't that laughable? Of course the conversation broke down. In a fit of rage, Madame threw out a threat. You're just a girl with no elders to arrange your marriage. Prepare to waste away your youth. Then she even ordered the steward to guard the gate strictly to prevent me from leaving the estate. Leave, I certainly would. But not just yet. First, under current law, women aren't registered as heads of households. Until I sort out my household registration, I can't formally cut ties with the Marquis family. Second, there are still things hidden in this estate, things I want to uncover. My father died when I was 10. By then, he was already one of the most renowned imperial merchants in the capital, with immense wealth. He always traveled with a large team of guards. But one day, on the road back to the capital, he was ambushed by bandits. His carriage was forced off a cliff. When they pulled him from the wreckage, he was barely alive. Clinging to life, he used his last breath to entrust me to my aunt, then passed away with deep regret. The capital prefecture investigated repeatedly, but came up with nothing. Eventually, the case was closed without resolution. All these years, I've never let it go. I've kept digging in secret. But those bandits vanished without a trace, like rainwater disappearing into a ditch. So I had to change tactics and start with the ones who had the most to gain from my father's death. Once I made that shift in perspective, the first suspect that came into focus was the Nanyang Marquis household. After my father died, this house lived comfortably off my massive dowry. Not only did it cover years of debt, but it also allowed them to put on the airs of nobility once again. I never wanted to believe the worst of my own aunt. Even if she treated me coldly and with indifference, she was still my last living relative. But now that she's told me to become a concubine, whatever bond we once shared has been completely severed. On my way back to my courtyard, I ran into Peitingyu, who had come rushing toward me. Ru Zheng, I was wrong about earlier. You can yell at me if you want. He was just like when we were kids, eyes turning red the moment he got anxious. I sighed softly. There's no need for that. You're not some pitiful poor relative. That's just something she said to be cruel. But she's going to be your wife one day. It makes sense for you to side with her. The color drained from Peitingyu's face. You know about it. I nodded silently. To say I wasn't hurt would be a lie. Ever since I was 10, I'd known that this cousin of mine was meant to be my husband. He had a gentle nature and had always treated me the best out of everyone in the estate. I had once dreamed of a peaceful life with him, sharing duties as husband and wife. But now he said to me, Ru Zheng, even if Yang Huiyan marries into the family, she'll never surpass you. To outsiders, you might be a concubine. But to me, you'll always be my wife. Isn't that enough? Looking at the hope in his eyes, all I felt was a chill deep in my bones. This wasn't the boy I once knew. No, second young master. I replied calmly. I've already told Madam. Our engagement is over. Peitingyu froze, blurting out, Are you crazy? If you don't marry me, who else could you possibly marry? Yang Huiyan is the daughter of General Zhenhai. You're just a girl with no family. How can you compete with her? I looked at him quietly. All the disappointment I once held vanished in an instant. Seeing my expression, he panicked and tried to make amends. I got too emotional. Please don't take it to heart. I stepped back a few paces, putting distance between us. I will never be a concubine. My father raised me to have self-respect and dignity. He taught me to seek a husband who would honor and protect me. If I can't find such a person, then I'd rather never marry at all. But none of this concerns you anymore, second young master. This is goodbye. I hurried back to my courtyard and shut the door behind me, locking Peitingyu out. That door sliced clean through my past. I stood in the courtyard for a long time, long enough for the moisture at the corners of my eyes to dry in the wind. Suddenly, 2 magpies flew past. Scared me to death. Someone near the sickly man's place just flew through the air, almost ran into us. No way. Humans don't have feathers. How could they fly? A mynah bird swooped in from somewhere, dropping a chilly comment as it passed. That's called qinggong, you bird-brained fools. 4. Qinggong? At those words, I felt a sudden jolt. Though the Nanyang Marquis household had noble status, their resources were limited. They couldn't possibly afford to employ martial arts experts. So how could someone who knew qinggong appear here? And in a deserted, forgotten courtyard, no less? The sickly one, mentioned by the sparrows, referred to Pei Hengming, the eldest son of the Nanyang Marquis and his original wife. His mother died in childbirth. After the current madam married into the family, she never valued him. The entire household followed her lead and treated him with cold indifference. I'd heard he was in poor health and rarely showed himself. The last time I saw him was at the spring banquet. He was coughing so terribly I couldn't bear to watch, so I had see and deliver some medicinal herbs and silver to him. At some point, he quietly returned the silver to my doorstep, along with a box of pastries. Would someone like him really be connected to people from the martial world? But my instincts, sharpened by years of vigilance and hunger for answers, told me not to ignore this clue. I rushed straight to the courtyard where Pei Hengming lived. It sat at the far corner of the front estate, quiet, deserted, its gate tightly shut. I hid behind a tree to observe. From the branches above came birdsong. Whoa! There's a person growing out of the osmanthus tree. I instinctively looked up into the canopy. Before I could see clearly, a sharp pain struck the back of my neck, and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, my ears were buzzing, and two people were arguing nearby. Are you out of your mind? Why did you capture her? How was I supposed to know she was your cousin? She was sneaking around and somehow spotted me. This girl has skills. What? Did you buy your shadow guard title with money? I swear I didn't move a muscle up in that tree, and she just turned her head and stared right at me. Stop making excuses. What now? She's your cousin, you handle it. His Highness the Crown Prince is still waiting on my message. I'm out of here. You. A crisp door slam cut off the quarrel. Silence returned to the room. My mind was reeling, though I kept a straight face. Shadow guards, the Crown Prince. This quiet, neglected young master. He was actually connected to the Crown Prince? That realization hit me like a thunderclap of joy. If I could earn his help, then maybe, just maybe, the truth behind my father's death could finally come to light. I suddenly opened my eyes and locked gazes with Pei Hengming. Startled, he stumbled backward, nearly crashing into the wall. Miss Ren, I mean you no harm. Please don't be frightened. I rolled off the bed in one motion, eyes locked onto him. His lips were tightly pressed together, face pale. He looked more scared than I was. You fainted outside my courtyard, so I carried. No, I brought you inside. I gave him a skeptical look. With that body? Could he really have carried me? Pei Hengming straightened up imperceptibly, the black robe on his broad shoulders and narrow waist outlining a surprisingly firm figure. Carried? More like cradled. Exactly. And he banged Ru Zheng's head against the doorframe too, made such a loud sound. 2 magpies had landed on the windowsill at some point. Only then did I realize my forehead ached dully. Just as I raised my hand to touch it, Pei Hengming flinched and stopped me. Don't touch it. I just applied medicine. He didn't resemble Pei Tingyu at all. His features were softer, more refined. His eyes tilted upward slightly, giving him a gentle, unassuming charm. After a moment's thought, I made a decision to gamble. I heard everything you and that man said. Who exactly are you? Pei Hengming's expression went cold instantly, his eyes filled with caution. But he didn't have long to remain on guard, because I led him straight to my storeroom. 5. That shadow guard who knocked me out mentioned the Crown Prince is short on silver. I casually opened a wooden chest, pulled out an account book, and flipped through it. Between the pages were thin gold leaves. Profits that shopkeepers had given me over the years, discreetly stored in this form. I don't have much else, but I do have money. I'm willing to fund you. All I ask is that you help me find out who killed my father. Pei Hengming barely suppressed the shock on his face. You're truly willing to offer silver to the Crown Prince? even though you don't know where it'll be used? I cut him off with a smile. We commoners consider it a great honor to support the heir to the throne. Countless merchants in Jiangnan would kill for such a chance. Besides, if the future ruler of the nation needs silver, who am I to question how it's spent? The entire empire will one day be his. What's my tiny contribution in the grand scheme of things? I'm a merchant. If I dare to do business, I can shoulder the risk. Pei Hengming didn't give me an immediate answer. But 2 days later, a black-clad shadow guard delivered an iron token and an address. I promptly arranged for the shopkeepers to send the account books and chests to the designated location, emptying almost all the silver I had saved. Si Yen was deeply worried. "Miss, if you do this, your dowry will be gone." I raised my hand, stopping her. "Forget whether I still have a marriage to speak of. Right now, the most important thing is to find the killer." What my father left me was never just gold and silver. It was loyal shopkeepers and a vast network of relationships. As long as I still have them, I can lose everything and earn it back again. After the storeroom was emptied, my informants outside the estate brought me the latest news from the capital. What stood out most was the Yang family's engagement. General Yang Bunyan of Jinhai, famous for his military exploits, had been summoned back to the capital by the emperor and granted an official post. He had become one of the hottest figures in the entire city. Many noble families were eager to marry into his household. But unexpectedly, he chose to align with the declining Nanyang Marquis family. When something defies reason, it demands scrutiny. I immediately sent people to investigate the Yang family's background. Meanwhile, all the movement around my courtyard hadn't escaped Madame's notice. When she saw the shopkeepers coming and going frequently, she panicked, thought I was dead set on moving out. She summoned me over and wept bitterly, claiming she'd lost her mind that day and wronged me, begged me to pretend the conversation about breaking the engagement had never happened, said the marriage arrangement still stood. But I knew better. Now that forcing me into concubinage had failed, she was trying to deceive me with a show of remorse, buying time to come up with a new scheme. Soon, the Dragon Boat Festival approached. Every year, the Nanyang Marquis household hosted a grand banquet, second only to the spring banquet in scale. In previous years, I had always arranged for the shopkeepers to deliver the finest goods from each store, to help the Marquis family put on a show of prosperity. But this year, no matter how many hints Madame dropped, both subtle and blatant, I pretended not to understand. At last, she couldn't hold it in any longer and came to confront me. "Ruzheng, we're still short on bird's nest and shark fin for the banquet. The buyer said your shops were out of stock." "Oh, in a city as big as the capital, there are actually things that can't be bought." Madame's face turned ugly. She snapped, "You're still holding a grudge over the engagement, aren't you? I'm your elder. I already apologized and explained. Why must you be so petty?" I feigned innocence. "Auntie, the shopkeepers said there's flooding down south. None of the goods are being transported. If the stock isn't here, how could that possibly be my fault? Then why haven't the summer uniforms for the servants arrived either? I told you flooding. The cotton's all from Jiangnan, and now every shop is running short." Just then, the Marquis personal attendant came over as well. "Miss Biao, the ink and snowflake paper the Marquis uses daily, those shops said they're out too." I was just about to come up with another excuse when, from inside the room, my pet Mina suddenly screeched. "Flooding! Flooding!" Madame's face darkened, and she slammed the door on her way out. I later heard she had to pay out of her own pocket to get the banquet supplies. Well, of course. She had quite a generous dowry herself back in the day. Why should I be the one bleeding money every year? 6. The Dragon Boat Festival banquet arrived as scheduled. Naturally, Yang Huiyan was the guest of honor. The madames and young ladies of various noble households crowded around her, and Madame never left her side, beaming with pride, as if declaring to the world that Yang Huiyan was soon to be her daughter-in-law. But something about it didn't sit right with me. If Madame was so desperate to secure this alliance with the Yang family, Why had she tried to force me to become Pei-Dingyu's concubine? Was she not afraid that Yang Huiyan might find out and stir up trouble? Or had they already reached some sort of agreement? I suppressed my doubts and slipped away to a quiet corner to feed the birds. The banquet was held lakeside, with male and female guests seated on opposite banks. From a distance, I spotted Pei Hengming. He had been coming and going mysteriously these past days, often absent from the residence. Pei Hengming clearly saw me too, because the moment our eyes met, he awkwardly turned and walked stiffly in the opposite direction. That sickly guy walks like his limbs don't belong to him. Why is he turning colors? Dummy, that's called blushing. The birds were chirping mischievously, making me laugh, until they suddenly scattered in alarm. Ru Zheng, hide. Fast. Someone's coming. Before I could react, a rush of wind surged behind my neck. I instinctively threw myself forward with the force, barely dodging the attack. Then collapsed on the ground, pretending to be unconscious. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the attacker, a burly servant woman from Madame's courtyard. Strong and broad-shouldered, she slung me over her back and carried me off. Ever since I'd been knocked out by a royal shadow guard last time, I'd asked the shopkeepers to prepare a few self-defense trinkets for me, so I wasn't particularly worried about my safety. But the birds were frantic, flapping and shrieking overhead. Help! Help! These humans are so dumb, they can't even understand bird speak. Ru Zheng, wake up. They followed us all the way to a guest wing meant for private rest. I quickly realized what Madame had planned. She wanted to use this public occasion, surrounded by guests, to stage a scene that would confirm a scandal between me and Pei-Dingyu, and force me to surrender. Sure enough, after the woman laid me on the bed, Pei-Dingyu entered immediately after. The door closed behind him. The room went silent except for the sound of his rapid breathing. He paced restlessly before coming to a halt beside me. Ru Zheng, in my heart, you are the only wife. Please don't blame me. I didn't want this, but I had no choice. As I lay there, eyes closed, listening to his breathing draw closer and closer, my rage surged. Just as he was about to touch me, I suddenly sat upright. What is second young master trying to do? Pei-Dingyu recoiled in shock, stumbling backward several steps. You're awake? What? Was I supposed to wait until you ruined my reputation before waking up? His face turned ashen, sweat pouring down his forehead. I didn't mean, Ru Zheng, after all these years together, you can't just throw me away like this. I sneered. How had I never noticed how smooth-tongued he could be? His whole family chased profit like hounds, yet now I was the one being painted as heartless? Clutching the small device in my hand, I stared him down, wary. He stepped forward. Bang! The door slammed open. Pei Hengming rushed in, face covered in peck marks, looking thoroughly disheveled. A flock of sparrows followed, darting into the room. Ru Zheng, we're here to save you. Sickly guy is clever. I pecked him. That was me. Relief surged through me. All I'd done was feed them a little rice, yet they protected me like this. Are you all right? Pei Hengming asked between breaths, clearly winded from running. He turned to look at Pei-Dingyu and froze. I followed his gaze, only to find Pei-Dingyu lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. I looked down at the device in my hand. At some point, I must have triggered it. 7. Pei Hengming spoke with difficulty. He's not going to die, right? Panicked, I waved my hands. No, he's just unconscious. It's only a sedative, it's not lethal. He let out a sigh of relief and quickly helped Pei-Dingyu onto the bed. You should leave. People will be here soon. This entire ploy relied on catching me and Pei-Dingyu in the act, so that witnesses could confirm our affair. No doubt Madame would arrive soon, guests in tow. But as I looked at Pei Hengming's tall frame, a bold idea sparked in my mind. Hadn't Madame once schemed to swap the groom? Well, now that Pei-Dingyu was promised to Yang Huiyan, that plan was no longer feasible. So why not end her plotting once and for all? Pei Hengming finished tidying up and noticed I hadn't moved. Why haven't you left? He asked, confused. I gave him a long look, smiling brightly. Eldest young master, are you engaged? His face turned visibly red. Why do you ask? Of course not. And do you have someone you like? He grew even more flustered. And no. Then how about we strike a deal? When Madam arrives, let's claim we're engaged and in love. I'll even donate another 30,000 taels of silver to the crown prince. No. Still not enough? Then 50,000. Pei Hengming raised a hand to his forehead. After a moment, he slowly nodded. Just as I was about to increase the offer again, he said, Fine, I'll agree. But marriage is a serious matter. Won't you regret treating it like a joke? I glanced at the unconscious man on the bed and gave a bitter smile. Even a joke is better than becoming his concubine. Pei Hengming looked at me, his expression unreadable. Just then, we heard a commotion outside. I quickly stood beside him. Though he looked thin standing next to him, I realized he was a full head taller than me. As the crowd poured in, he subtly shifted, placing himself firmly in front of me. What's going on in here? At first, Madam's voice was full of fake surprise. But when she saw Pei Hengming, someone who shouldn't be here, her voice shot up sharply. What are you doing here? Where's Tingyu? I peeked out from behind Pei Hengming. Auntie, second cousin was passed out drunk for some reason and wouldn't wake up. I came with eldest cousin to check on him. Madam's eyes darkened as she looked between the two of us. She was just about to speak, but I quickly cut in. Dear aunt, I know it's improper for me to be alone with eldest cousin like this. Even though we're engaged, the wedding hasn't yet taken place. Please don't blame us. We were just worried about second cousin. Engaged? Madam's face turned livid as she shrieked. What engagement? I smiled calmly under the curious and judgmental eyes of the onlookers. My father was Ren Changhe, an imperial merchant. Before he passed away, he entrusted me to the Nanyang Marquis household and promised me as wife to a son of the family. If there were no engagement, why would I bring the entire Ren family fortune here as my dowry? I looked straight at Madam. Her expression flickered with panic. There are 2 young masters in the family. Since second young master is now engaged to Miss Yang, then naturally the engagement must refer to eldest young master. Isn't that right, Auntie? The noble ladies in the room were all veterans of household politics. They immediately grasped what was going on and began to smooth things over. Oh, it's just an engaged couple meeting in private. Nothing inappropriate happened. No need to make a fuss. Yes, second young master must have had too much to drink. Hurry and get the physician before he does real harm to his health. Oh, so the young lady was promised to eldest young master after all? What wonderful news for this household. 2 happy unions. Madam clenched her jaw so tightly I thought she might break a tooth. Her smile was more painful than crying. Can't handle it already? I stared coldly at her. The real show has only just begun. 8. After that farce at the Dragon Boat Festival banquet, I completely cut off all business ties with the Marquis of Nanyang's household. Previously, all their shops sourced their inventory from the Ren family's merchants. They often bought on credit, essentially earning money without investing a cent. Not to mention how much the household consumed, eating, taking, using as they pleased. Now that the supply line was severed, chaos broke out in the estate. Even though the festival had passed, the servants were still wearing thick spring clothes. In the kitchen, even the most resourceful cook couldn't prepare a meal without ingredients. 4 days now, they'd been making do with dried vegetables and cured meats. Some of the maids and older servants, egged on by Madam, began grumbling outside my courtyard. Indirect insults aimed my way. They've taken advantage of her for years, and now that they can't anymore, they're the ones crying foul. Si Yen was indignant. Don't be mad. Watch me poop all over them. I eat a lot, so I poop a lot. The birds had gotten bolder lately, perching beside me as I reviewed ledgers. Why bother arguing with them? Knowing they're struggling is satisfaction enough. I bribed one of the storehouse matrons to sneak me the estate's ledgers from recent years and started cross-checking them. Merchant women are most sensitive to money. I had always sensed that something was off with the accounts. But now that I did a thorough review, I found nearly 100,000 tales of silver unaccounted for. Given Madam's frantic greed, what was she so desperate about? That afternoon, I disguised myself and left the estate. I had arranged to meet Pei Hengming at a tea house. He had written to say he'd made some progress in his investigation. But just as I arrived at the entrance, I unexpectedly spotted the Marquis household's carriage. Madame had come, with Yang Huiyun on her arm. The way Yang Huiyun clung to her was intimate, like a daughter, not a future daughter-in-law. A sudden thought struck me. I quickly instructed Si Yen to go inquire about something, and quietly followed them upstairs. They chatted and laughed as they went, finally sitting in a private room in the corner of the second floor. As the door closed, I caught the sound of a man's voice from inside, strangely familiar. Later, when I met with Pei Hengming, I didn't bother with pleasantries. Was your father in the estate when Pei Dingyu was born? Pei Hengming thought for a moment. I was 4 at the time and sickly. My father took me to Hugua Temple to pray for blessings. By the time we rushed back to the estate, Tingyu had already been born. I suppressed the theory forming in my mind and didn't press further. Instead, I asked about the investigation. Pei Hengming's expression grew serious. Uncle Ren's death may be tied to an old case. It's a serious matter. His Highness is handling it personally, but it will take time. I recalled how my father's personal attendant had dodged every question and fallen silent. I had expected this wouldn't be a simple case, but I didn't expect the Crown Prince himself to be involved. I've already waited 7 years. A little longer won't hurt. Pei Hengming nodded slightly. After a pause, a faint blush crept up his neck. I raised an eyebrow, curious. His eyelashes fluttered, and he avoided my gaze. Even the back of his neck turned red. He looked so charming, I couldn't resist teasing. Fiancé. Pei Hengming froze, his dark eyes locking onto mine like I'd said something explosive. Sorry, I was being forward, I quickly added. The little myna bird perched on my shoulder suddenly squawked. Oh heavens, his heart's beating faster than I peck rice. Pei Hengming abruptly stood up and turned to leave, only to stop after 2 steps. Back still turned, he mumbled. October 9th is an auspicious day for our birth charts. If you don't like it, I'll keep looking. Then fled in embarrassment. Trying to dodge the wedding bill, huh? Why runs so fast? I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the sudden pounding of my heart. Was he really thinking about turning the fake engagement into a real one? 9. After that day, Pei Hengming started avoiding me. If there was news, he only sent messages, he wouldn't meet in person. But though he was hiding, I had a group of very special informants. The sparrows. They chattered daily about his movements. Sickly guy's acting weird. He stood outside your courtyard for ages, but didn't come in. Longtail said he's tidying up his courtyard and even put up a swing. Birdies build nests and get wives. Sickly guy wants a wife too. All right, enough. Don't call him sickly guy. It sounds awful. I tossed a few more sunflower seeds into the jade plate to shut them up. Oh, Ru Zheng's got a crush on sickly guy.
Out.
I'm trying to read the ledger. Stop squawking. Half amused, half exasperated, I shooed the little chatterboxes away. Just then, Si Yen rushed in, covered in dust. Miss, I'm back. I had sent her to visit my hometown a few days ago. I hadn't expected her to return so soon. Before I could ask questions, a commotion erupted outside. I stepped out to find Granny Zhou leading a group of servant women, hauling jars and crates. Miss Biao, the young master is about to marry. Madam ordered us to repaint the walls and redo the columns. Madam's suddenly this generous? No need. I had this courtyard fully renovated 2 years ago. Back when I first moved in, it had been in shambles. I'd paid to fix it up myself. Well, Granny Zhou hesitated. At least let us leave the supplies here? What kind of household notifies renovation plans on the day of? Si Yen grew agitated, but I stopped her.
Fine.
Leave the materials here. Granny Zhou hurriedly directed the servants to unload everything into the courtyard. Si Yen looked at me, puzzled. I motioned for her to stay calm. I'd traveled all over the country with my father, and I had a sharp nose. The contents of those jars and crates, I recognized them instantly by scent. I knew exactly what Madame was planning. Turns out, I hadn't even made my move yet, and she was already losing her nerve. That night, a southern breeze blew. It was the new moon. In the darkness outside my courtyard, a shadow passed swiftly. A spark lit the night. Then the flames began to grow, illuminating half the sky. Strangely, the night watch maids didn't notice a thing. Only when the roof was fully ablaze did someone finally shout, "Fire!" The quiet night exploded into chaos. Voices cried out as people rushed toward the burning courtyard. See and clutched my arm, trembling, lips white with fear. The waves of heat rolled toward us, and I could smell my hair beginning to singe. Rouge Zheng, my dear, oh my child, are you trying to rip my heart out? Madame arrived fashionably late, supported by Granny Zhou, wailing as she watched the flames from a distance. Hurry, someone save her, my poor, pitiful niece. The servants flung buckets of water at the flames, but it was useless. The fire didn't slow down at all. The thick smoke began to fill the narrow space between the firewall and outer wall, where Si Yen and I were trapped. I was just about to move toward the upwind side when, "Miss, look. Is that the eldest young master?" I turned to see a figure grab a bucket from a servant, dump it over his own head, and charge into the burning courtyard without hesitation. My mind went blank. I lunged forward, screaming his name. Pei Hengming.
10.
Pei Hengming was soaked through, trembling slightly. I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or from fear. He stared at me, unmoving, as water slid down his cheeks, looking, somehow, like tears. Why did you? My throat was so hoarse it hardly made a sound. He raised a hand, then hesitated. It's enough that you're safe. I really thought you were inside. He blinked away the moisture on his lashes and let out a small breath of relief, only to be overtaken by a coughing fit from the thick smoke. I rushed to support him, helping him to move farther from the fire. He walked steadily, but he never let go of my hand. The fire burned uncontrollably until the fire brigade from the capital magistrate's office finally arrived. My courtyard was completely destroyed, except for the storeroom. Back when I had renovated the place, I had spent a fortune reinforcing the storeroom with thick firewalls. Even the roof had been given extra protection. Looking at it now, every tael had been worth it. Among the supplies Granny Zhou had delivered, most were paint and a whole sack of pine resin, all highly flammable. The moment I saw them, I knew. When scheming had failed, Madame was ready to resort to brute force. So, I decided to turn her plot against her and use her own hands to give her a blazing debut. The only thing I hadn't accounted for was Pei Hengming. I never imagined he would risk his life to save me. After the fire, he acted strangely. Whenever our eyes met, he would quickly look away. But when I wasn't looking, I could feel his eyes lingering on me, full of quiet resentment. Before I could coax him back to normal, a summons from the capital magistrate arrived. A fire of this scale couldn't go uninvestigated. There was a whole department dedicated to arson cases, and I had been waiting for this. When I arrived at the hall, Madame, the Marquis, and Pei Tingyu were all already present. Madame was putting on quite the performance, tears and snot flowing. It's all my fault for being impatient. The children are getting married, so I wanted to refurbish the courtyard. I never imagined it would lead to something like this. Granny Zhou comforted her. Madam, you can't blame yourself. Fires are always accidents. Who says it was an accident? I smiled faintly, eyes locked on the pair of them. Madame's face stiffened. She tried to maintain her composure. Rouge Zheng, what happened to you is tragic. I, as your aunt, failed to manage things well. But surely, this was just an unfortunate accident. I turned and bowed to the official from the fire bureau. Sir, I saw the person who set the fire. The room erupted in shock. Granny Zhou blurted, That's impossible. Why impossible? The arsonist was wearing a narrow-sleeved baize. I let my words drag out, deliberately looking her up and down. Oh, what a coincidence. exactly like what Granny Zhou is wearing today. Granny Zhou's face went ghostly pale. Sweat beaded on her forehead. It was a moonless night. You couldn't possibly see what someone was wearing. I could. Foolish humans. A screech owl swooped in from outside and dropped a dead rat right on Granny Zhou's head.
Ah!
She screamed and collapsed. As she hit the ground, a fire striker fell out of her sleeve. Well, look at that. Granny Zhou carries fire starters with her, I said. She scrambled to grab it, but the constables were faster. I needed it to light lamps at night. Madame jumped in front of her, eyes sharp as knives. Run, Rouging. Don't twist things to attack me. If you have a problem with me, say it to my face. Why take it out on Granny Zhou? She was with me all evening. Older folks wake easily in the night. What's so strange about her carrying a fire striker? 11. Carrying a fire striker isn't strange at all, I said with a smile. But there is something strange. Auntie, you might not know this. Earlier night, a maid accidentally spilled one of my dye boxes outside the courtyard. That particular dye is extremely strong. Once it stains your shoe soles, it's nearly impossible to clean off. You claim Granny Zhou stayed by your side all evening? Then let's take a look at her shoes and see for ourselves. Granny Zhou trembled violently and collapsed to the floor. The constables flipped over her shoe. A deep indigo stain marked the sole clearly. After the fire broke out, Granny Zhou never went near my courtyard. So how, exactly, did the dye get on her shoes? There was no room left for denial. Granny Zhou went limp, dragged away by the constables like a corpse. Arson is a serious crime. If not capital punishment, it was certainly exile, 3,000 li at the least. Madame's face was ashen. She clutched her chest and muttered about misjudging her servant, trying to shirk all responsibility. The fire official was no fool. After the Marquis slipped him a few silver notes under the table, he decided to close the case on the spot. I had anticipated all this. A noble madam would never be punished easily. All I ever wanted was two things: to be freed from the Marquis household, and to remove Granny Zhou. To kill or burn someone, a person must trust their inner circle. So when I guessed that Madame intended to use fire to get rid of me, I knew the one she'd assigned the job to could only be Granny Zhou. Madame had tried to be clever and ended up losing her closest confidant. And knowing her nature, she would not take this lying down. Sure enough, it wasn't long before retaliation began. The signs and shop fronts of my most famous rouge shop and jewelry store were smashed. All by Yang Huiyan. Business plummeted overnight. Soon after, rumors spread that my Bao Lai Bank had lost huge sums of money. Panic ensued. Customers rushed to withdraw their deposits. I had no choice but to sell off several pre-negotiated trade routes at a loss to free up capital. They thought this would make me suffer. What they didn't understand is, for merchants, battles aren't won in a single day. True revenge is not a loud strike. It's the final, fatal blow. Around the Qixi festival, a new opera suddenly took the capital by storm. It was called The Cuckoo in the Nest. The troupe performed for free. You only had to buy a cup of tea to watch. Thanks to its compelling lead and intricate story, the opera became an overnight sensation. Songs from the play echoed through every alley and street. Just as the public was becoming enthralled with the tale, a peasant woman arrived in the capital, family in tow. She cried and sang as she made her way from the East Gate, eventually kneeling outside the capital magistrate's office, accusing a noble of stealing her child. Her story perfectly mirrored the plot of The Cuckoo in the Nest, and soon, crowds gathered. The pressure of public opinion forced the magistrate to hold a public hearing. The woman knelt in the center of the hall, her voice sharp and steady. The one who stole my child is none other than the second young master of the Marquis of Nanyang's household, my poor son. The Nanyang Marquis household had never been particularly well known in the capital, but their recent engagement with the Xinhai general's family had put them in the spotlight. By the time the Marquis family arrived at the magistrate's office, the entrance was already packed tight with onlookers. Slander. These are baseless lies, Your Excellency. The Marquis's face flushed red as he pleaded his innocence. Behind him, Madam and Pei Tingyu stood pale and speechless. The moment the peasant woman saw Pei Tingyu, she burst with joy and tried to run to him, but was held back by the constables. "My son! That's my son!" The magistrate slammed his gavel. "Silence. Tao Zhousher, you claim the second young master of the Marquis household is your son. Do you have proof?" The woman pulled two simple, honest-looking men from the crowd. "Your Excellency, just look at these two. Do I really need more proof?" 12. The two men were tanned from years of labor, their skin dark, but their facial features were almost identical to Pei Tingyu's. The resemblance was obvious, even to the naked eye. The same as his two older brothers. Is that still not proof he's my son? I was seated at a tea house directly across from the capital magistrate's office, listening as my little bird scouts reported what was happening inside the courtroom. Pei Hengming sat beside me. He couldn't understand birdsong, but he had been the one to track down the peasant woman and bring her to the capital. No one knew the truth of the case better than he did. "When you asked me to delay punishing Granny Zhou, did you already suspect all this?" She was so discreet. "How did you catch on?" I smiled and lifted my teacup. "Instinct and money." I used to think she was cold and indifferent until I realized she treated Pei Tingyu the same way. But once Yang Huiyun entered the household, I saw how gentle she could be. I went through the accounts. Every year, in the month of Pei Tingyu's birthday, the household sent extravagant gifts southward. Even if the eyes lie, money does not. Her heart was never with the Marquis family. I poured the remaining tea onto the ground.
Come.
The next part is about to begin. Time to see her off. Outside the capital magistrate's gates, someone shouted, "Come quick! General Yang's estate is being raided." The crowd burst into uproar, surging toward the general's residence. First, the general's house gets raided. Then it turns out the Marquis' son is a fake. Talk about cursed. Let's go. The Marquis family really fell into a trap with that marriage alliance. I stood on the edge of the crowd, quietly watching as Madame was taken away by constables. Her hair ornaments had fallen out, her embroidered robes were filthy, all traces of her noble bearing gone. She looked up, and her gaze met mine through the sea of people. In that instant, her pupils shrank, as if she had finally understood something. "It was you." Her lips trembled, voice hoarse. I silently mouthed the words. "You deserved it." She lunged forward, face twisted. "I'm your aunt, your own blood."
How could you do this to me?
"What would your father say?" I laughed coldly. "How dare she bring up my father? I did this to you? Oh no. This doesn't even begin to cover it." I strode into the courtroom, facing Pei Tingyu's venomous glare head-on. "Your Honor, there is more to this case. The Madam of the Marquis household, my aunt, secretly bore a child with General Yang Bunyan. She gave birth in secret and passed the daughter, Yang Huiyun, to him to raise. For years, she diverted huge sums of money from the Marquis estate to fund her illegitimate child. When Yang Bunyan's corruption, selling contraband salt and war horses, was discovered, he needed to cover the losses. So my dear aunt orchestrated a scam, cheating my father out of a massive sum of silver. Then Yang Bunyan dispatched private guards to kill my father and silence him. I charge her with murder, adultery, and fraud. I want her to pay with her life for my father." The courtroom fell silent. The Marquis collapsed to the ground, face ashen, aged 10 years in an instant. You're lying." Madame trembled violently, shrieking, "Where's your proof?" "Proof," I said calmly. "The fact that General Yang's estate is being raided and his family purged is proof enough. Why don't you guess what fate awaits Yang Huiyun now?" It was like I had struck her soul. She jolted, her eyes flashing with despair, as if someone had gripped her throat. "Huiyun knew nothing. She's innocent. Innocent or not is not for you to decide. You used my father's blood and wealth to support your lover and your bastard daughter. You tried to force me to be your fake son's concubine, tried to steal my dowry, and when that failed, you set fire to kill me. You are utterly depraved. You've disgraced the Ren family's ancestors. But rest assured, you'll get your punishment. And your daughter, she'll pay the price too. 13. The case shocked the entire capital. After careful deliberation, the capital magistrate made the final judgment. Madame Ren, crimes confirmed, sentenced to death after autumn. Pei-Ting-yu, real name Tao-Ting-yu, returned to his birth family. The Marquis of Nanyang, negligent in household affairs, ordered to pay reparations to the victims. Tao-Ting-yu, yes Tao now, came by my private estate before leaving. He was holding a kite he'd made for me when we were children. He cried, begging to see me one last time. I didn't see him. He wasn't the mastermind, and maybe he had been coerced by Madame Ren, but he had acted as her accomplice. Had it not been for my birds, who knows what would have become of me? I didn't seek revenge on him, only because my father had taught me. We merchants pass wealth through our hands, but keep compassion in our hearts. After handling the flooding in the south and General Yang's crimes, the Crown Prince summoned me for a personal audience. Miss Ren, you are a rare woman, generous, courageous, and righteous. Because of your noble actions, countless refugees in the south were saved. I must reward you. Name your request. The Crown Prince was in his 30s, graceful, refined, and full of quiet authority. He turned to Pei Hengming with a knowing smile. Pei Hengming flushed and lowered his gaze, saying nothing. I knelt solemnly. Your Highness, thank you for your mercy. My father's injustice has finally been redressed. I dare not ask for more. Say it without fear. Investigating a case is a matter of justice, not a reward. I took a deep breath. Then I ask your Highness to establish female household registration, to allow women to operate businesses independently. The Crown Prince blinked in surprise, instinctively glancing at Pei Hengming. Pei Hengming's expression didn't change, but the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Very well. So you refuse to let me play matchmaker, but I'll still grant this request. After the Crown Prince left, I suddenly felt too ashamed to face Pei Hengming. He had done so much for me. Without him, I could never have avenged my father. But just now, in front of the Crown Prince, I hadn't asked for any reward for him, because I was too desperate. I needed that household registry more than anything. I rushed to speak before he could. I'm sorry. I was selfish. Oh no. Sickly guy probably thought Ruzheng was asking for a marriage decree. You fool. Ruzheng doesn't want to get married. Ugh, I don't want to hatch eggs either. It's exhausting. Baby, don't say that. I'll hatch them for us, okay? The birds flew in excited circles around Pei Hengming. He laughed. These little birds, it's like they're talking to us.
Told you.
Sickly guy's been clever since he was little. Hush, hush. Can't you see Ruzheng and Sickly guy haven't even sorted out their wedding plans yet? Only then did I suddenly remember what the Crown Prince had meant by playing matchmaker. My face went hot. There's still time, Pei Hengming said gently. There are many good days ahead. If you're willing, I'll wait. Take your time. His eyes were warm, and the birds nestled affectionately on his shoulder and hand. Those beady black eyes, paired with Pei Hengming's soft gaze, all looked at me. I couldn't help but think, autumn is full of good days, isn't it? The end.